Alright, today I'm going to talk a little bit about installing and replacing a power supply. So we've got this system here. It's a new system. The motherboard has already been installed. There's a new CPU mounted underneath here, right in the CPU core of course, and then we've got this new cooling unit. Now I've already installed the new power supply. Here's the faulty one. As you can see, it's a little old. It was probably time for it to be replaced. So, in the process of building a new computer, we just decided, let's go with a new power supply. Keep this case, which is still functionally intact. So, I've already got this power supply hooked up. So what we're going to do is unplug it. So we're unplugging the power from the back so that from back here, there's nothing except the screws. So from back here there's going to be 4 screws on most PCs. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. So what we're doing here is we are just unscrewing. So there's 1. There's 2. There's 3. And the last one, 4. And as you can tell, I'm just using a simple multi-tool kit. Alright, so with the 4 gone, it should just be a simple matter of lifting and removing the power supply unit out from its casing. Now, with this power supply unit right here, you'll notice this great big old fan. So, with this one, you got to make sure that the fan is pointed downwards, of course, standard PC airflow control. So in this setup, all the airflow is going to sort of channel through this front grill, blowing out this way. And this is also a minimum fan setup. Now with this power supply unit, it has, its base plugs, which are a little bit short actually, and then its peripheral power cable hookups. So in this case, we have these 4 pins. It's tiny. And then, of course, coming out the power supply unit is the 20 plus 4 pin for the main power of the motherboard and motherboard power supplies. So, before we get to that, also paying attention, since this is a new system, I've yet to install the RAM. I will be testing the power supply first. So, and also, again, I mentioned this one has a large fan on the bottom. If you'll notice, this is a traditional power supply setup where you have airflow coming in through one end, right here, and then out the back where the fan is, on a traditional older model power supply. There's been a little bit of variation in the last few years on power supplies. So what we're going to do now, make sure we have things lined up in the back. Your screw holes will line up. And just like putting a tire on a car, when I am screwing things in on a computer, I try to cross thread so that I'm not putting too much tension on any one part we're threading, and that I can make sure as I screw it in that I am applying pressure equally. I'm sure, as many of you know, a strip screw on a computer is a huge pain. So we try to avoid that and make sure we have a nice, safe tension. Especially the power supply. You just want to make sure you're doing everything safely with the power supply. I've never had any horror stories happen to me yet. I'm sure it'll happen sooner or later. But I have heard horror stories with power supplies. And I can see how that would happen. So I'm cross-threading, basically tightening in an X a few times until I feel like the tension is nice and secure without being too much. Just right, basically. Alright, now that we've got that done, we can go ahead and go about the business of hooking up the power supply to the motherboard. So right here we have our motherboard. We look at our pin code. Whoops. And we will be going right in here. So I try to make sure I'm generating even force, of course. You don't want to put too much pressure on a motherboard. Alright, good. It's a sturdy fit. Good, good, good. So again, looking at our peripheral cables, what we're going to do is briefly go back in here. And so we have, additional attachments for all of our peripherals. In this case, there's a SATA plug, more SATA, and the PCI power set. PCI Express, excuse me. Oh, and even though I used my existing screws, it came with more screws, so you can never have too many screws. Alright, where are we with it? So here, these are two. Now this motherboard, there we go. No problem that time. That was nice. With the older power supply, I actually had a bit of an issue plugging that in, so that was nice that just went in right off the bat. Alright, since the first thing I'm going to do is test the computer's base power load. This is pretty much all I'm going to hook up right now. I'm not really comfortable with the way that's sitting. Alright. So this is all I'm going to hook up right now. And I've got the power button to the front of the computer already hooked up to the motherboard. So what we're going to do now is close the case, plug it in, and test the load.